stuck in Nashville, and you know, they make so much money, and they do so well in Nashville, you can't get them out of there. You know?
Do you have any thoughts about the rising interest in country music?
I think it's fantastic. You see, country music was always a part of the influence on my...
These Elvis photos were hidden for decades, until now. There's a photograph of Elvis Presley that you were never meant to see, not because it's scandalous, not because it shows something illegal or shameful, but because it shows something far more dangerous to the carefully constructed legend of the king. It shows the truth. The image was taken in early 1976, less than 18 months before Elvis would be found dead on his bathroom floor. In the photo, he's sitting alone, not on stage, not surrounded by screaming fans or flashing cameras. He's in a dim room somewhere in Memphis, shoulders slumped forward, eyes fixed on something just out of frame. His face carries a weight that no jumpsuit or stadium spotlight could ever hide. He looks like a man who has been running from something for so long that he's forgotten what it feels like to stop. This photo was never released. It never appeared in any magazine, any documentary, any tribute book. Within 48 hours of being developed, someone from Elvis's inner circle tracked down the photographer, and the image vanished, purchased outright, buried, erased from the public record as if it never existed. For almost 50 years, that's where the story ended. Just another rumor in a sea of Elvis mysteries. Another whispered legend among collectors and obsessives who spent decades hunting for the photos they knew existed but could never find. Then, 3 months ago, everything changed. An anonymous estate sale in a small Tennessee town. A box of old photographs sold for almost nothing. And inside that box, tucked between faded family snapshots and forgotten vacation prints, was the image that was never supposed to survive. When it surfaced online, the reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Some fans refused to believe it was real. Others broke down in tears, because this wasn't the Elvis they had been shown for half a century. This was someone else entirely. Someone human. Someone struggling. Someone who looked decades older than 42. But here's what makes this story more than just one sad photograph. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a single image that slipped through the cracks. This was part of a system, a machine built specifically to control what the world saw and didn't see when it came to Elvis Presley. For years, Elvis's team operated with a simple but ruthless policy. Any photograph that didn't serve the image got bought, buried, or destroyed. Photographers who got too close found themselves approached by polite men with large checkbooks. Negatives were purchased at premium prices. Prints were confiscated. And in some cases, if the rumors are true, images were burned entirely, reduced to ash so that no one could ever know what they contained. This wasn't paranoia. This was strategy. Elvis Presley wasn't just a man. He was a product, a brand, a financial engine that generated millions of dollars every single year. And the people who controlled that engine understood something fundamental about fame. The image matters more than the reality. Let the public see Elvis sweating on stage, pouring his heart into a ballad, and they'll love him forever. Let them see Elvis alone in a dark room, staring at nothing, looking like he's already halfway gone, and the spell breaks, the fantasy collapses, the money stops. So they built walls around him. Not just physical walls, though Graceland had plenty of those. They built walls of silence, of suppression, of carefully curated imagery, designed to keep the legend intact, no matter what was happening behind the scenes. And for the most part, it worked. The Elvis the world remembers is young, electric, untouchable. He's the man in the leather jacket on the '68 comeback special. He's the voice that made teenage girls collapse in the aisles. He's the king, frozen in time, forever powerful, forever alive. But that photo from 1976 tells a different story. It tells the story of what happens when the cameras stop rolling and the crowd goes home. It tells the story of a man who gave everything to his audience and had almost nothing left for himself. And it raises a question that has haunted Elvis researchers for decades. If this photograph was hidden, what else was? Because this wasn't the first image they tried to bury. It wasn't the last. And some of the most disturbing photographs connected to Elvis Presley weren't taken by strangers with telephoto lenses or tabloid reporters looking for a scandal. They were taken by people he trusted, people who walked beside him through Graceland's gates, people who saw everything. And when you discover what those cameras captured and what happened to those images after Elvis died, you'll understand why this story was never supposed to be told. Elvis Presley was surrounded by cameras his entire adult life. Paparazzi outside the gates, professional photographers at every concert, fans sneaking shots from the crowd. But the cameras that captured the most revealing images weren't held by strangers. They were held by the people closest to him. The Memphis Mafia, the inner circle, the men and women who ate at his table, traveled on his planes, and watched him when the rest of the world couldn't see. These weren't professional photographers. They were friends, employees, confidants. And like anyone in the orbit of someone famous, they took pictures. Casual snapshots at birthday parties, candid moments by the pool, late nights in the den when Elvis was relaxed, laughing, being something other than the king. For years, these images stayed private. They were personal memories, not commodities. But the moment Elvis died, everything changed. Suddenly, those casual snapshots became valuable, incredibly valuable. Tabloids offered thousands of dollars for a single unseen image. Book publishers came calling. Documentary filmmakers started making lists of who might have what. And the people who had spent years inside Graceland faced an impossible choice. Stay loyal to a dead man and keep his private moments private, or cash in on the access they once took for granted. Some chose money. Within weeks of Elvis's death, photographs started appearing in magazines and newspapers around the world. Images that showed him tired, overweight, struggling. Pictures that would have been destroyed instantly if he had still been alive to object. The people who sold them justified it in different ways. He would have understood. The world deserves to see the real Elvis. I need to provide for my family. But others in the inner circle saw it differently. They saw betrayal. A quiet war began over who controlled the visual legacy of Elvis Presley. On one side were those who believed the public had a right to everything. On the other were those who believed some things should stay sacred. And caught in the middle were hundreds, maybe thousands of photographs that had never been seen by anyone outside the Graceland walls. One former employee, whose name has been kept private for decades, reportedly possessed a collection of over 200 personal photographs. They weren't scandalous. They weren't exploitative. They were simply real. Elvis eating breakfast. Elvis playing with his daughter. Elvis sitting alone in the jungle room, staring at nothing, lost in thought. Collectors offered enormous sums for these images. Tabloids promised six-figure payouts. Even legitimate historians and archivists reached out, hoping to preserve them for posterity. The answer was always no, not for sale, not for publication, not for anyone. When this person died years later, their will contained specific instructions. The photographs were to be destroyed, every single one. It was their final act of loyalty to a man who had given them a job, a purpose, a front-row seat to history. And according to the family, those instructions were followed. But here's where the story gets complicated. Rumors persist that not all of those photographs made it to the fire. That somewhere, possibly still in Memphis, possibly scattered across estate sales and private collections, some of those images survived, waiting to surface, waiting to show us an Elvis we've never seen. And maybe that's exactly what he was afraid of. Because Elvis wasn't naive about cameras. He understood their power better than almost anyone. There are stories of him asking friends to delete shots they had taken, moments where he physically confiscated film, unwilling to let certain images exist, even flashes of anger when he felt someone had captured something too personal, too unguarded, too real. This wasn't vanity. This was survival. Elvis knew that the camera didn't just capture moments, it defined them. It froze them forever. And a single photograph, taken at the wrong time, could undo years of carefully constructed image. But the most revealing photos weren't taken at Graceland. They weren't taken at concerts or parties or private gatherings. They were taken in the one place Elvis believed he was truly safe. And when these images finally surfaced, even his most devoted fans struggled to accept what they were seeing. In the final years of Elvis Presley's life, a strange silence surrounded his health. Everyone close to him knew something was wrong. The weight gain was visible to anyone with eyes. The canceled shows told their own story. But the specifics, the medical details, the true extent of what was happening inside his body, that remained hidden behind closed doors and confidential arrangements. What most people don't realize is that documentation existed, not just medical charts and prescription records, but photographs, clinical images taken during examinations, candid shots from hospital visits, pictures captured by staff members and visitors who witnessed moments of profound vulnerability. These images were never meant for public consumption. They were taken for medical purposes, or personal records, or reasons that have never been fully explained, but they existed. And after Elvis died, they became the most aggressively suppressed photographs in the entire Presley archive. The few researchers who have caught glimpses of these images describe them in hushed tones. They show a man who looked nothing like the Elvis on stage. A man whose body had betrayed him completely. A man who, in his final months, appeared decades older than his actual age. The jumpsuit hid more than anyone realized. The carefully controlled concert lighting performed miracles that no camera flash could replicate. And the photographs taken in private told a story that contradicted everything the public believed about the King's final chapter. So why were these images buried so deeply? The obvious answer is dignity. Elvis Presley was one of the most photographed human beings in history. His image generated millions of dollars annually and continues to do so decades after his death. Releasing photographs that showed him at his most broken would have damaged not just his legacy, but an entire economic empire built on the memory of a vibrant, powerful, untouchable star. But there's another layer to the suppression, a darker one. Some of these photographs didn't just show Elvis suffering, they showed who was around him while he suffered. They documented the people who enabled his decline, who wrote the prescriptions, who looked the other way when they should have intervened. Releasing these images wouldn't just have embarrassed Elvis, it would have implicated others. And those others had every reason to ensure these photographs never saw daylight. Then there are the photographs from August 16, 1977. The day Elvis was found unresponsive on his bathroom floor. The day the music died for millions of fans around the world. What most people don't know is that images exist from the immediate aftermath. Not just crime scene documentation, but photographs taken by various individuals present in those chaotic first hours. Some were official, others were not. And their existence raises uncomfortable questions that have never been fully answered. Who authorized photographs to be taken at a death scene? Who thought in that moment of tragedy to pick up a camera? And more importantly, where did those images go? Over the years, some have leaked. Grainy, disturbing pictures that occasionally surface in tabloids or dark corners of the internet. Each time they appear, the estate moves quickly to suppress them. Legal threats are issued. Websites are pressured to remove the content. And publicly, representatives maintain the same position they've held for decades. These images should never have existed. Their distribution is a violation of the family's privacy and Elvis's memory. But here's where the conversation becomes complicated. Because not everyone agrees that suppression is the right approach. Some historians argue that these photographs, however painful, are part of the historical record. They document the death of one of the most significant cultural figures of the 20th century. Hiding them doesn't change what happened. It only obscures the truth. Others, particularly devoted fans, take the opposite position. They argue that some boundaries should never be crossed, that Elvis the man deserves the same dignity in death that he struggled to maintain in life, that releasing these images serves no purpose except to satisfy morbid curiosity and generate clicks for the people who publish them. There's no clean answer, no clear moral high ground, just a collection of suppressed images that sit in limbo, too painful to release, too significant to destroy, caught between the demands of history and the desire to protect whatever remains of a deeply complicated legacy. But these aren't the only hidden photographs that challenge the official narrative. There's one more category of suppressed images that almost nobody discusses. Not because they're too graphic or too sad, but because they reveal something that doesn't fit the story we've been told. And when these pictures finally came to light, they didn't just complicate Elvis's legacy. They threatened everything his family wanted the world to believe. When you step back and look at all of these suppressed images together, a pattern emerges that's impossible to ignore. The photograph from 1976 showing Elvis exhausted and alone. The private snapshots held by inner circle members who refused to sell. The medical documentation that vanished into locked archives. The images from August 16th that surface and disappear like ghosts. Individually, each one tells a small story. Together they reveal something much larger. The Elvis Presley we were allowed to see was a construction, a carefully edited version of a man who existed in full color but was only ever shown to us in approved shades. Young Elvis, powerful Elvis. The leather jacket and the hip shake and the voice that changed everything. That version was real, of course, but it was incomplete. The Elvis who aged, who struggled, who looked in the mirror and saw someone he didn't recognize, that Elvis was systematically erased from the visual record. And the question nobody wants to ask is simple. Who benefited from this erasure? The estate certainly did. A tragic but dignified death is easier to monetize than a slow, visible collapse. The licensing deals, the merchandise, the tribute concerts, the Graceland tours, all of it depends on maintaining a certain image. An image of greatness, an image of power, an image that doesn't include an overweight man struggling to get through a concert or a patient hooked up to medical equipment in a private hospital room. The family benefited too, not in a cynical way, but in a deeply human one. Protecting children and grandchildren from seeing their father and grandfather reduced to tabloid fodder. Shielding them from images that would have followed them through every school hallway, every job interview, every public appearance for the rest of their lives. There's nothing sinister about wanting to protect the people you love from that kind of exposure. And honestly, the culture benefited as well. We wanted Elvis to be immortal. We needed him to stay frozen in time. Forever young, forever dangerous, forever alive in the way that only icons can be. The suppressed photographs threatened that illusion. They proved he was mortal. They showed the cost of being Elvis Presley. And most of us, if we're being honest, didn't want to see that cost itemized in brutal photographic detail. But here's the part of this story that often gets lost in the debates about privacy and exploitation and historical truth. Not everyone who hid these photographs did it for money, or reputation, or legal protection. Some of them did it out of love. Think about the people who walked beside Elvis in his final years. The ones who saw everything. The ones who could have sold their images for enough money to change their lives and chose not to. They weren't protecting a brand. They weren't thinking about licensing deals or estate valuations. They were protecting a person they had watched give everything to the public until there was almost nothing left. Maybe they looked at those photographs and saw something the rest of us never could. Not a celebrity, not a product, just a tired man who deserved better than to have his worst moments frozen forever and passed around for strangers to judge. So where does that leave us? Decades later, with these images still scattered across archives and private collections, slowly surfacing one by one. As a culture, we have to decide what we actually want. Do we demand the complete truth, even when it hurts? Do we chase every hidden photograph until nothing remains private? Or do we accept that some things were hidden for a reason, and that honoring Elvis might mean letting certain images stay buried? There's no easy answer, but maybe the question itself reveals something important about our relationship with the people we turn into icons. We take so much from them. Their talent, their time, their privacy, their peace, and when they're gone, we keep taking, demanding more, consuming everything we can find, never quite satisfied. Maybe the greatest gift we can give Elvis now isn't another documentary or another tell-all book or another leaked photograph. Maybe it's simply letting him rest, remembering him the way he wanted to be remembered, and accepting that some doors were closed for a reason. If this story stayed with you, I want to hear your thoughts. Should these hidden photographs remain buried? Or does the truth belong to the fans who kept his legacy alive? Share your answer below. And if you want more untold Elvis stories, subscribe and stay close. The vault isn't empty yet.